thanks for everyone else jumping on right now to join us for today's trainer talk. I think we're really going to have today's topic is going to be a really interesting one, especially for people wanting to get into this industry, just to learn a little bit more about what it's like and kind of like all the knowledge and everything that you need to go through to get to that point. So first, how have you been, Korey? How are things going for you?
Yeah, things are good. I think we finally turned the corner from first winter and then fake spring and then second winter and then second fake spring. I think we're in actually real spring right now.
I think so.
Oh man, the fourth has been so
we
nice.
Had our first, I guess, Saturday track meet this past Saturday, and it was one of those where, like, of course, we're getting out there, bus leaves, we're getting out there, maybe around 8:30. Weather's really nice. We have jackets on, a little bit of a breeze, and then it's kind of like you're coaching up your athletes, and you don't realize like what the temperature is like as you get through the day. Finally, it's getting close to 3 o'clock, and all of us coaches look at each other and just kind of start laughing, like, "Hey, your face is burned," and it's like, "No, your face is burned." It's like all of us got so much more sun than what we expected because I don't know. I guess you're not thinking about that at 8 o'clock in the morning, But yeah, weather's definitely nicer. So yeah, for everyone coaching up or participating in those spring outdoor sports, we're finally, at least in the Midwest here, we're finally getting better weather for that. So I think we can go ahead and jump into the topic here. And I'll start by asking you, Korey, when you first got into, training, whether that's training gym pop clients or training athletes, what was your perception of the industry? Like, did you have any idea like what that type of position was going to be for you or how that was going to look?
Well, most of my experience is in strength and conditioning at the collegiate level. I was a personal trainer for a while, but nothing compared to really what I spent in the collegiate sector. I had a really good idea, honestly, and I was pretty lucky because in high school I had met a full-time strength and conditioning coach at the local college in town and kind of knew what he did, and he was like, "Hey, come to this school and you can work in the weight room alongside me." And I did that for almost 4 years. So I had a really, really good picture of what that life would look like and what my schedule would be and just what the rhythm and the flow and the demands of the job. Now from the personal training side, when I was a personal trainer, I did not have a great sense for what that was going to be. Now, like schedule wise, it was similar, but the demands and like what you needed to do and how you interacted with your clients or your athletes or a strength and conditioning coach was definitely different. But as far as like going through school and what I thought I wanted to do at the time, I had a pretty good idea.
Because I think that's one of the misconceptions that a lot of people go into it. I think a lot of people, and I've had friends that get into training simply because they enjoy working out and they like being in a gym setting all day, which is really good because I think that means that you're passionate about what you're doing or at least the field that you're in. But I think that's kind of a misconception because when you're going through your day as a trainer, I mean, the focus is no longer on you, and you are completely focusing on your clients entirely all day. Now, hopefully, with your schedule, like you'll have maybe an hour or two, and this is assuming a full schedule. You'll have an hour or two where you can, kind of get in your own workout. But I think, from my experience from talking to others that have gotten into the industry, I think that's one of the things that kind of caught them off guard was how much of a time commitment is involved and how, yes, you are at a gym or in a gym setting pretty much all day, but the focus isn't on you. And just because you're in a gym doesn't mean that you can get in a workout anytime that you want. So I think that was, for me, that was probably, even though I did have knowledge going into it, I think that was one of the most eye-opening parts about it, where, my day was starting at 5 a.m. And early on, especially, I think I had, a decent block of time in the middle of the day where I could, get in a good meal and get in my workout. But then that ended up being a really long day when you don't leave the gym until 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. So I think in looking at that aspect, I think that's one of the most eye-opening parts of, kind of getting into this industry. So I guess that's
Totally that because yeah, I went through the same, like I said, even though I had a good idea of the schedule, it still didn't hit. I became a full-time professional that, well, just because you're not on the floor doesn't mean you're not working. Like just because you're not with the group or with a client doesn't mean that your time is just do whatever you want. That's your time to do other things. That's your time to program. That's your time to do admin. When I was in the collegiate sector, I also was a professor, so that's the time I taught classes. That's the time I prep for classes. But when you're actually on the floor as a trainer or a coach, the times that other people work out, when most of the world works out, you are working. Like that kind of typical 6 a.m. to 8-ish a.m. or 5 a.m. to 8-ish a.m. before work, and then the 4-ish p.m. to 8 p.m.
Yep.
That's when you're working, because that's when that's when your clients work out. And so if you have, like you said, if you have a full schedule, if you have, depending on the type of facility you work in, like you're kind of expected to have clients every hour of the day or have groups every hour of the day. I know plenty of coaches that if their schedule like literally isn't blocked off with clients or groups every hour of the day, their coaches or their bosses are like, what are you doing? It's your job. Like, and so then because of those factors, being a full-time professional coach or trainer, honestly, it makes it one of the hardest professions to get in your own training and your own and focus on those things and make sure that you're taking care of yourself from that perspective. But I'm with you. I was the exact same way. I got into this because I liked to work out. I liked to train. That was the impetus, which is totally fine. You need that. I mean, you have to. That's part of loving to do. But if that is something that is such a driver, it is important to know that if you decide to make a career out of this, your training will likely take a backseat. Your identity wrapped up into it, and like that's something that you are really, really holding to. It's just you have to really consider it.
I think that's one of the biggest ironies, maybe. And everyone watching, we are going to get into like more of the education that you need and kind of the business aspect and everything. But just speaking on this topic, I think that's one of the biggest ironies is that if you're not prepared, we spend our days, taking care of other people. And sometimes we forget to take or maybe don't have as much time as we'd like to take care of ourselves, whether that is, getting it's kind of funny. We preach, get plenty of sleep, get your nutrition in, get your workouts in, and then we're busy taking care of other people. And then it's kind of like, well, I should probably get my workout in now, or I should probably make sure that I get more to eat at this point in the day or something like that. So anyway, just talking about, entering the industry, entering the profession, some of the things that maybe trainers just getting into it need to know, things that I wish I had known a little more going into it. I think those are at the top of the list. Now, I mean, even if someone had laid out all of that to me prior to getting in, I was still going to go into the profession just because I love it. I love coaching up people. I love helping people. I love helping people improve their lives. And so if you're considering being a personal trainer, being a strength coach, that is one of the most rewarding parts of it, is that you get to wake up every morning knowing that you're going to make a really big impact on whoever you're working with. Now, I mean, that's maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 hours of that week for that individual person. But for some of the clients that I've had, I mean, that's the highlight of their week, being able to come in, kind of deload, de-stress from all the other stresses in their lives, So they're really relying on you to, get the most out of that hour. So I think that is really gratifying, and that's one of the biggest benefits that I've gotten from this career.
Yeah, and I would say that, again, depending on how you want to make your career, from a more traditional perspective, being a strength conditioning coach or being a full-time personal trainer who trains clients face-to-face, that has to be a high priority for you and what fulfills you. You can still work in fitness and you can still work in training and not necessarily do those things and have a great impact. But if you want that route, I think one of the main things that you're looking for in a job and one of the main things that gives you fulfillment is helping others, playing the long game,
right,
relationships with them, trading that time for yourself potentially and being okay with it. And then in return, you helping others, you having a servant mind or a servant heart is really, really critical. So just something to consider, like, again, if you're a young student or if you're an early trainer, I mean, it's still good for everybody to know this stuff because it's something that we all and we all go through. But I'd say that's definitely on the top of the list for something that's really important to you if you want to get into the world of
definitely. So those are things that I wish I had known maybe a little more so going into the profession. But on the other hand, I was very prepared going into it based on the education that I received. I had very good instructors, very good mentors. And I think depending on where you end up starting your career, there might be different education requirements. But definitely you do, regardless of what route you go, and we talked about this the other day, I mean, you can get a, study by yourself course and, kind of study on your own, and hopefully you're studying up and you're able to pass that test. Definitely going the college route, especially if you are hoping to make this a more long-term career. I think it is important to be in that classroom and have instructors giving their perspective too, just to kind of give their experiences, and they're going to end up teaching you things that you can't necessarily learn from a book. As thorough as a lot of the books that we have are, you're always going to learn something from other people. So and definitely when you're going through that, I don't know if you want to talk about some of the classes or courses, subject areas that really helped you out in getting prepared to take the exam.
Well, I guess I didn't really go through a program that specifically prepared you for any sort of exam. Here's what I'll say about school, like an official undergraduate education. If at all possible, you gotta try to get in a program that gives you practical experience throughout. Now, like if you take like a personal training class, it's not uncommon for that personal training class to have an assignment where you work with the client for 6 to 8 weeks, and that's turned into something. I mean, I hope it should have that if it doesn't, but you need to, hopefully have a structured internship program, something throughout your education that is getting you the real world practical experience, so that when you graduate and you find yourself on the floor, that's not your first time. Like that anything is critical. And then, hopefully they're getting you some kind of stuff outside of the textbooks too, where they're supplementing that. And then, so like for my education, that was absolutely critical. Like that was by far and away the best aspect. And luckily, like throughout the country, those are easier and easier to find because it's becoming more and more prevalent that people like me and you become professors, people who have practical experience. They were a trainer for a while, or they also do it in conjunction with their teaching. Those are sometimes the best people to teach classes. And I think historically, maybe 10 to 15, 20 years ago, that really wasn't the case. It's a lot more prevalent. So, but that's critical throughout your education. The other thing I'll say with education, and we're talking again, traditional exercise science, kinesiology routes, is make sure you don't just do that. The biggest thing I wish I would have done throughout my education, and I kind of did this with my master's because I got nutrition, is just do something else, like supplement it with something other than just exercise science. So whether that's business or psychology or something else that's part of what you're going to deal with regardless of the sector that you're in. So that's either a minor or a double major or something like that. I would highly, highly recommend don't just do exercise science or kinesiology.
I think speaking on the coursework or the subject area that you really need to study going into your training career, I think, and some of these are going to sound really obvious to people, but I think they need to be said and really emphasized is anatomy and physiology. If you don't know your anatomy and physiology, you are so you might be able to program for people. You might know different exercises, but you're always going to come into a situation where a client is going to ask you a question about a certain muscle or a certain muscle group or the biomechanics behind certain movements, and you really need to be prepared to answer those questions. And just for your own knowledge base, I mean, the more educated you are on a lot of those areas, the better coach you're going to be, the better programs you're going to be able to write. And it's really just going to help you long term in your career. So I'd say definitely study up on your anatomy and physiology. Like you mentioned, nutrition is a huge one. Even if you don't plan on going the nutritionist or dietetic route, I didn't go that route. I know you studied up on a lot more nutrition than I ever have, but you're always going to have clients that ask you questions about nutrition. They're always going to want feedback on that. So the way that that's helped me is if I ever get a question about nutrition, I'm right up front and say, hey, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a dietitian, but here's information that you can use. And a lot of that's kind of like baseline information. I think for people like you and I, like we're so entrenched in this industry and this education and kind of like constantly studying up on all this information. So what seems like common knowledge to us might not be common knowledge for other people. So any type of nutrition information that you can give to people, whether that's an athlete or a Gen Pop personal training client that has specific goals, you're going to need to be prepared to answer some of those. I mentioned the biomechanics. If you are, a certified personal trainer, it's good to have anyway, but most gyms are going to require you to also be first aid and CPR certified. You might not use it. Hopefully, for your sake, you don't have to use it. And I mean, hopefully, you're never in a situation that is that extreme where you have to use it, but you always have to be prepared. And then as far as the communication aspect, and this goes a little bit into what you said about like finding different subject areas, maybe getting a completely different minor or something. I think sports psychology or any type of psychology, any type of, sociology, just coursework or information that's going to help you better communicate with people. Because I think that's something that a lot of trainers discount is the communication aspect. I've watched alongside, some personal training sessions where, a trainer's giving really good knowledge, maybe taking a client through an awesome session, but their inability to properly communicate, I'll say it that way, with the client, it just kind of makes the entire session awkward. And if you can't communicate with people, if you don't know how to communicate with people, that's really going to hold you back in the long run as far as being a trainer.
Yeah, 100%. Because what's the most common pain point of managers trying to hire trainers? They can't coach they can't like coach on the fly. They can't communicate. Yep. They can't relate to the clients. All they know is the book knowledge. They know the training up and down, but ultimately that becomes not very effective because the clients really bought in, or they're not engaged, or they can't hold on to clients. So I think there's two ways you can prepare yourself for that, for the communicative aspect when it comes to relationships with your clients and coaching on the floor. Number one is the practical experience. That's like I said earlier, like that just getting comfortable being in front of people, dealing with unexpected things that come up, dealing with equipment shortages, or I have back squat in my program and they're all taken at the time I want to start my session. Like all of those things go into you being comfortable on the floor. And if you're comfortable, you can communicate better. The other aspect, and this is something, it kind of goes into what I said earlier about choose another area of study, but just study general however you can. Study human behavior. Study why people behave the way that they behave. Study behavior change. Study what drives decision making. All those things are going to help you understand not only the struggles that your clients may be going through with what you're asking them to do. You know, they might be exercising for the first time ever. They might be sticking with something for the first time ever. You're asking them to do weird things they've never heard of, or things they don't do potentially. And then, you know, from the nutrition aspect, that was the biggest realization for me when I got done with my master's degree, or during my master's degree, was like, I've got all the nutrition information in the world, but a lot of nutrition issues are behavior change issues. They're not necessarily knowledge issues, or they're not necessarily issues of that the person doesn't know like what's good or bad. It's more like the act and making the choices and making those behavior changes to follow what they need to do. So as early as possible, start diving into human behavior change, and that will massively help with your communication. Those are the two ways I would say that you can kind of prepare for that, and just be comfortable.
And something else that comes to mind when you mentioned that, and just talking about the whole communication aspect, is definitely get as much knowledge as you can. You know, in your exercise science, anatomy, physiology, all those different aspects, but learn how to translate everything that you know into common terms. I've seen a lot of situations where like a coach or a trainer might be doing a great job of explaining something to a client, and I completely understand what they're talking about, but the words that they use are so over the head of the client that it's like they're probably even more confused than before they ask the question. So really kind of, I don't know if you want to say dumb it down a little bit. I actually did that when I had my first few clients, and I forget what it was that I said. I was trying to direct a woman into, you know, a certain movement, and I said, you know, you should feel this exercise in your glutes, and kept going on, and she wasn't even sure what glutes were. And so finally, just based on the movement that she was doing, and you know, I demonstrated it, she finally said, "I don't mean to be crass, but is that your butt?" And I said, yeah, that's actually exactly what I'm talking about. So, and that's just one example of, you know, don't talk over people's heads. Whether that's you don't know how to translate what you know into simpler terms, or if you're just trying to sound extra smart, because more often than not, I mean, you do want people to know like that you are familiar with what you're doing. You do have a lot of knowledge, but at the same time, like sometimes that can come off as condescending, and you just saying like, "Hey, look at how much I know. I'm going to help you." When a lot of times they don't even care about that. They just want you to help them to their specific goals and help them for that day, for that workout. So I think that's a huge one that I've come across in my career.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and speaking of like proving your knowledge, right, your results will prove your knowledge. Like use that as your proof. Don't try to sound, use jargon. You got to watch the jargon. Like that's really, really hard because we're so immersed in it in our education. And typically, like when we are taught exercises or whatever, we are taught that like bend this joint, feel this muscle. You got to speak.
Yep.
You have to use common language. You know, unless you know a client really, really wants to know the deep details, you got to speak it in a way that is just understandable. So when I was teaching, the way I would explain this to my students is, you got to learn, you have to learn the skill and the art of what do I need to know and what do they need to know. So try not to dumb it down or water it down. It's just what's the need to know here? What do they know? What do I need to know? So I need to know glute max, glute med, hip joint, acetabular-femoral joint. They need to know, like, what, or how can you communicate it in just a normal way that the person you're speaking to, as you know them, would be able to really take the knowledge and know what you're talking about. So so there's a book that we have that really dives deep into this. It's called The Language of Coaching. So this ties into another aspect of something I think trainers, you gotta start learning more about this, because I think it's one of the upcoming frontiers. But this is the intersection of communication and motor learning. So, Coaching by Nick Winkelman. It will talk about how do we process information, how do we actually learn, what does that mean for how we actually coach somebody. So he gets into analogies, he gets into cueing, and how we take the information and we translate it to movement, either teaching or the improvement of movement in our clients and our athletes. So motor learning, anatomy, biomechanics, that's like one of the other key things, and that's wrapped up in everything. It includes anatomy, biomechanics, and it includes communication. So that'd be that. Yeah, you definitely start looking into that as much as you can, because I don't even think I had a motor learning class.
I'm not sure that I did either, to be honest. But I think that's one of the interesting things about this industry is, like, we learned what we learned in the classroom, but and when you guys get into it, for anyone that is hoping to get into this industry, if you're not already, and you're going to take your exam and you want to make this a long, successful career, you will have to take continuing education courses to keep up with your certification, which is another point that a lot of people maybe just learning about this field need to know. It's not like you can get certified and then you're good for the rest of your life. But I think that is, it's accountability really is what it is, because everything in this industry, in this field, is constantly changing. It's science, so we're constantly learning new things. We're learning new ways to do things, where something that was true 15 years ago, we might not think is true now, just because we've learned so much more in that specific area. So definitely keep up on your continuing education. And to that point, I don't think anyone really talked about communication, or as nearly as much as we do now 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. So the field is constantly evolving. Try to learn from people that are smarter than you. I always like to say that. I know that I'm not the smartest trainer ever. I know I'm not the smartest person, so I always try to look for people that I know are smarter than me, or maybe just more experienced than me, and constantly learn from them. So that's something else to keep in mind. Even after you get through all of your coursework, you pass your personal trainer certification exam, still seek out more people to learn from, constantly make contacts, so that not only so that you can expand your reach, but also so that you can keep learning from other people. And I just think that's such a big one, the communication and continue learning from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's, like, I think highlights the thing about the traditional education that sometimes gets overlooked, because, like, we know, just because you have an education, just because you have a certification, doesn't mean you're going to be successful or a good trainer. And sometimes people who come over from other professions or did something for quite a while, and then they self-teach themselves, because they have a different perspective, they're really good. But what I think a traditional education gives you that maybe the other route doesn't is maybe just a little bit more of a filter of what con ed options are maybe not legitimate or time, where you just kind of look at something, I don't think that's right. Like, I don't think that with what we know about anatomy, physiology, and whatnot. So does it mean you're going to be a good trainer? No. But I do think it gives you a little bit better of a fit.
Definitely so. And I think when you were just talking there, it made me think. So knowledge is always important. I do have a number of certifications, and that is, my personal trainer certification through the NSCA. But then I also have certifications for weightlifting, so Olympic lifts. Speed and agility. One of my niche areas where I train athletes is tennis players, so I'm certified through the International Tennis Performance Association. All of those are really good, but I think even if there wasn't a specific certification for that, I still would have gone through those courses just to continue learning and to expand my knowledge base. It's just helped me so much. So there are a lot of different certifications out there, and that you can definitely take a look at and hopefully get. I mean, if that's the route you want to take, but more so than actually getting the physical certification, it's more important to continue learning and learning in as many areas as you can, because you never know. I'm trying to think of a specific example, but just say, like, you might come across a certain continuing education course that you might not have any interest in, or maybe you have a slight bit of interest in it. You never know. Like, go ahead and learn that area, not only so you can get a different perspective on what you're doing and what you might do in the future, but you never know when you might have a client come in and then they have a very specific need, and you think, hey, I'm glad that I took that continuing education course because now I'm able to help this person. Whereas if I hadn't learned that extra information, then I might be clueless right now and not be able to help that person at all. So yeah, even after you get through your initial certification, just continue learning, learn from as many people as you can and from as many sources as you can. I think that's so key. So, now going into this, I know we kind of touched on it a little bit, but just when you are starting your training career, make sure to get as much experience as possible right off the bat. I think that's so important. A lot of people might go into it saying, now you were in a different situation because you were in a collegiate setting, so you knew that you're going to be working with athletes. But if you're in the private sector, you might still say, hey, I only want to work with athletes, or I only want to work with, special populations. But it is going to be so hard for you to get into one of those niche areas. So right off the bat, when you start your career, you're going to need to train as many different people as possible. And I think one way that helped me was, of course, I did start training athletes right away, but I had, on the adult personal training side, I had a woman come in that wanted me to train her, and she was in her, late 60s. And at the time, I thought, this doesn't have anything at all to do with me training, junior high and high school athletes. But, so two things there. I needed to fill up my schedule. So that's a big part of it. Like, if I didn't take this client, then, I wouldn't have had it as full of a schedule. But at the same time, I kind of realized that some of the issues that I was helping her work through, whether that's like a hip issue or like a shoulder impingement, whatever, she had a lot of the same issues as a lot of my injured athletes. So don't discount the idea of, hey, I only want to work with, high school athletes. I'm never going to learn anything from training, a Gen Pop client, never going to learn anything from this 70-year-old woman that I'm training, when actually I learned a lot from her that I was, kind of working through her issues that I was able to take back and be able to help my high school athletes that I was training. So never discount a client in your ability to help them, and also what you can learn from them that might help you out in other situations in the future.
Yeah, and that diversity of clients will help with the communication aspect. Because you instantly that you cannot coach those populations the same. You just can't. And, someone said in the comments earlier, it's not a one size fits all, and that is spot on. Like, it just isn't. And yeah, that early on is really critical. And I would say, honestly, though, in the collegiate setting, it's honestly more like the private sector than a lot of people realize. So the vast collegiate strength coaches are going to be at a small school. If you're at a school, you are coaching multiple teams. It is not uncommon for a small school strength coach to be in charge of 300 to 500, maybe even 700 athletes.
Right.
That's a lot of, like not only in the sports, but in the type of people that you're working with. And that is a lot to manage. And I wish that I would have started trying to essentially run my operation, because I was in charge of like, I don't know, 350 athletes, teaching classes and whatnot. If I would have started trying to think about what I was doing in terms of small business, that was in how I set up my workflow and how I set up even my interaction, because I was at a small school, like fraction of a percent of my athletes were going to go on beyond that. So none of them are really thinking long term as far as sports goes. There's so many other things that are higher priority, except for a few of the athletes. Well, that's everybody. That's everyone you're going to work for, like high level, collegiate, pro, Olympic. That's critical. So I think those situations are more similar than they are different. Here's what I'll say about like coaching high school and coaching youth. If you can, I think you can probably coach anybody. Like that's like, there's this like perception, and I think it's getting better, that like the best coaches should and are like, again, high levels, meaning D1 pro, but man, there are some amazing coaches at the high school ranks, at the youth ranks, and because they have to be amazing communicators and amazing managers of people and amazing managers of systems, they're amazing coaches. And so like, don't discount that, number one, as a route for your profession, because there's a lot more opportunities there. There's also an opportunity to make an impact, because once you get to the pro ranks, they're more like a colleague. They're not really someone you're going to impact from a emotional level, even a physical level to a degree. But yeah, if anyone who can coach high school and middle school is, in my book, they're like saints, because I couldn't do it.
And that's one of the biggest things that I learned early on. I don't think I ever had it in my mind that I wanted to, train pro athletes. I did think for a little while that, maybe getting more into the collegiate level was what I wanted to do. But honestly, one of my very first like full groups of athletes, they were junior high kids. And I was excited about the opportunity to do that. But at the same time, like, I was kind of like, well, what am I going to do with these kids? Like, what am I going to, but then the more that, so they taught me a lot of things. So everybody listening, don't discount that. Just like Korey said, don't discount the experience that you can get in training younger kids, and also what they're going to be able to teach you, because to your point, I think they made me a better coach. Because rather than, like a college athlete who has probably had a decent amount of lifting or training experience, or especially a pro, I had to take these kids through the whole process. I had to make sure that they were squatting correctly. I had to make sure that, especially younger, they weren't too lax in their joints. So we had to be careful about that. I couldn't just say, hey, go pick up this 20-pound dumbbell. I couldn't do that, because I was concerned a little more about their joints and their safety overall. So I think that, honestly, I went from training athletes out of college to training junior high age kids. And these were like 5th, 6th grade when I first started out. Completely different, but I learned so much from them. So along those lines of, take what you can get when you're first starting out. You never know what you're going to truly enjoy until you actually try it out, because you might have one idea in your head, but then you start getting experience in a different area, and you might say, hey, I'm actually good at this. I enjoy this much more than this other area that I thought I would be good in. So definitely take that into account. And kind of circling all this together, we've touched on it a little bit, but this is a service industry. You are in, even though you are training people, this is a customer service industry and career. So regardless of what situation you're in, you have to treat your clients, your athletes with respect. Essentially they are paying your bills. I mean, if we're talking about this as a career, if they don't come in to train, or if you say something to make them mad or you get them injured, they're probably going to leave. And then you're without a client, maybe it's an entire group that you make mad and they're gone. And all of a sudden, I mean, you have that hole in your schedule. Not only you have that hole in your daily schedule, but I mean, if we're talking about a business, I mean, that's money that you're missing out on too. So you always have to take that into account. I guess you could be in some situations where you are paid salary, but most often if you're in the private sector doing this, if you're not working, you don't get paid. So you always have to keep that in mind. A couple things about that I learned early on. If you're going to have clients that end up canceling on you, for different reasons. I mean, they might get sick at the last minute, they have something that comes up. Really try to be understanding of their situations. I mean, we're all human, things pop up, somebody might be on their way to the gym for their session and they get a flat tire and they have to scrap that session. You can be understanding of a lot of situations like that. But at the same time, if it's a repetitive thing and, clients are constantly canceling on you and it's set in their contract that if they miss a session, then you still have to charge that out. I mean, it sounds kind of brutal in some cases, but you have to go ahead and charge them out because otherwise, I mean, like I said, it sounds bad in that case, but if you have a client that is constantly canceling on you, that's time that you're not getting paid. And then I think that is one of the reasons that trainers don't have a very long career span because of those situations. They're not prepared going into it. And yeah, it can be tough sometimes in those situations. I don't know if you've ever had any experiences like that or have any input on that.
Yeah, I definitely had experiences like that. Yeah, you have to be understanding. You've got to be empathetic to certain situations. But at the end of the day,
yep.
You're a professional and you're providing a service. And if you've done your job, if you've done things correctly, should be able to provide a service that not just anybody can give. So, yeah, you've got to set boundaries and you have to run your business. You have to say legit business. I offer a legit service that you can't get anywhere else. I'm basically the first line of defense on your health because your doctor for an hour every 6 months or a year, and you're going to see me three hours a week for hopefully really. So yeah, it was just I think about it every time someone comes over to my house to fix something. Like we just had our washing machine break. Right here, a total time of 15 minutes, $80. $80. It's okay. You have to have the mental shift of you're providing a legitimate professional service that has an impact on the most important thing really that you have is your body, your body. So you're helping other people improve and maintain it, and along with the other, like you mentioned, the mental health benefits. So yeah, that's just my perspective on it. And of course there's tons of variables with that of no can charge and all that kind of stuff. And but I think that hits the overall theme that we're trying to say is you treat this like an actual profession and you are you're making a career out of this. This is your livelihood.
Absolutely. Like you said, you are getting into this to make a career of it. You're going through your education, making sure that you are as smart as you can possibly be so that you can help all of your clients much, much better. Just keep all those things in mind and actually look at this as you are providing a service. You are helping people get healthier. You're helping them get stronger. I look at it as preventative health. I mean, it really is preventative health care because you are helping someone stay healthy, stay in shape, stay mobile as they age. Even if it's to a small degree, you're helping them with their nutrition and just creating better life habits. If you're getting into this industry, really take it seriously. Look at it as what it is, preventative health care, and that you are making such a big impact on everyone that you see every day. So if you are passionate about this, definitely I encourage you to do it. I've had a rewarding career from it. You know, just the idea of being able to help people on a daily basis. But yeah, definitely take it seriously. Take your education seriously. Take your clients seriously. And I have no doubt that you'll be able to have a successful career from it.